So the last video we have talked about how to create a model using the framework manager from your database. So today instead of going more deep into it, I would like to take a few minutes and describe different types of objects you have in the framework manager. So as you see here, at the root we have the name of the project, and under this you have seen this you see this little square with a bunch of boxes. This is called a namespace. So what is a namespace? Namespace is something like a, you can think it represents your entire super store of all your objects meaning the tables and views and etc. So this is kind of a namespace. So in our particular case we have a test1 namespace. Now in the real life you can define a namespace. So for example, it could be name of an application or a sub application. Let's say if you have an inventory applications, you can call namespace as inventory, where all the inventory related tables, which is basically objects, could be there. And you can have another which is sort of sales or organization. Anyway, so in our particular case, or most of the Cognos implementation I have seen, is that we have only one namespace, which pretty much has all our tables. Okay, so the next one is, you see this symbol which is kind of this three vertical bars and a one horizontal at the top of them. This is called a query subject. Now query subject is actually sort of represent a table. Now it could be also a view, but so for as far as Cognos is concerned, instead of calling the similar terms like database and views, it called query subjects. Now query subjects could be a table or a view. So this is a query subjects. So under query subjects you have query items. Now query items can you can think they're close to columns. So each of these are query items. Now let's click on a query item. Now each query item, they have different you can think certain properties involved. So the couple of important properties are, one is the data type. Now when you create a model using the wizard as we did here, you inherit the underlying table or the column data types. So in our particular case, this was a it was an integer column, and by default Cognos has put as decimal. So you can change it here, or you can just leave it like that. Now the other important was usage. Now usage, here we have identifiers. So if you click here, so we have different types of usage. One is identifier, fact, and attribute. So these are the main three which one you need. So for example, all your ID columns, meaning most of them which could be used to represent let's say a relation. For example, let's say if you have agents column and you have an agent ID as a primary key, and maybe in a sales table, if you have a region ID as a link between region table and region ID, in let's say this one, this region ID, as you see. Okay, let's say we have, okay, so we don't have a region ID here, but we have, let's say, quarter ID. So quarter ID is a identifier. So let's now change this one, going back to agents table. It is a identifier. Now name is a attribute. Attributes name, typically attributes are typically strings. Region ID again is a identifier. Now you have seen a little bit a triangular symbol here, which will come to that these are called regular dimensions, and when you talk about dimensions, we'll get there. I'm just showing through different types. Then there is another important property called regular aggregate and semi-aggregate. So what that means is that, let's say for a for a fact column, so let's take a different table, sales, and then we could represent it better. So let's say sales. Now sales, we have in the sales query subject or table, we have ID column we have agent ID column. Again, it's a identifier, so let's change it to identifier. Okay, we have changed it to identifier. Then quarter ID, this is again an identifier, so let's change it to identifier. We have cell date. Now cell date, anyone guess? So it should be an attribute. So attribute, you can think it's kind of an information which you want to show it to on a report. So if you think, so let's say if you think of a report where you are showing the sales amount and the sales and maybe the number of sales done across different regions and in different quarters. So these regions and quarters, this could be attribute, and the sales amount, this could be fact. So sales amount is a fact. Now we were talking about aggregate and semi-aggregate. So as you see here, it says sum and sum. What that means is, let's say when you are aggregating, if you have a report and you are showing all the sales data and you want to roll up, that means let's say you are displaying in for every regions and you want to add all the regions. So the way these the values of sales data would be treated when you aggregate is through sum. Now what could be the other choices? So other choices could be, as you see here, we can have average, we can have count. So you can think certain situation where you would apply count. Maybe we can get to those things later on. But sometimes having sum may not make sense. So for example, if you're showing, let's say, sell date, for example, right? And if you're aggregating, this doesn't make sense to add, right? So in this particular case, you would see that we would have regular aggregate as unsupported, because these columns can have valid values only when it is a number types, because on number types you can add, subtract, you can count, you can average, but these are not really possible to do on a string columns like, say, a date column or attribute like name. Okay, so again, let's change it to customer ID, which is identifier. All we all know that. Okay, good. So you've got all columns pretty much fixed. So I think you've got a good idea about different types of columns. We have an identifier, we have an attribute, and we have fact. So you may want to group all the identifiers together, and so we have nice all identifiers together, followed by an attribute, followed by a fact column, which is a sell amount. So let me show you all the tables. So here also I am grouping all of them. So here we have region, we have quarters. So here again you see there's something called, here you see L. L is actually a measure. Now we'll get to measures maybe on our next video. But measure also is something like a fact. So for example, you have a sales column, you have an inventory column, and or inventory query subject, and a measure could be an inventory amount. So let's group let's make them quarter ID. It's identifier. So we have start and month. Okay, so I think that completes our model. So now we'll start building few reports, but I think before that we have to create something called relation, which we'll show in our next video. So let's save this project. So I've saved this project. So in our next video we'll discuss about Cognos, how to create relations among different query subjects.